Hello, sinners, saints, and sisters. I know that I said that it was the end of the season, but I couldn't stay away because there's a project that I care a lot about. It's called The Shift, and there are some really fun announcements. There are some important dates regarding this project. You might remember Brock Heasley from last season. You should go back and catch that episode if you missed it, but Brock is back. He is the writer and director of Angel Studios' first feature film, and it's the same studio that brings us The Chosen. I know. And he's back with one of the producers of the movie. His name's Justen Overlander. And the best part of this episode, why I want to get it out to you quickly, is that you have an opportunity to make history with Angel Studios. This is their first feature film, like I said, and you get to be a part of it. So I really hope that you enjoy this conversation about Christian art and chasing dreams and saying yes to a God who can never, ever, ever be outdone in generosity. Hello, you two. I am joined today by Brock Heasley and Justen Overlander. Brock is the writer and director, and Justen is the producer of this very exciting new Christian feature film called The Shift. And I am so excited to have you two here. Listeners, you probably remember Brock Heasley from last season, one of my very favorite episodes. Go back and listen. It's season 7, episode 7. And we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about your book, The Other Side of Fear, which is a spiritual memoir of sorts, very impactful. And we talked about how, even though we're really nice people, Christian art can sometimes make us cringe.
Yes.
And you introduced your movie to us, probably most importantly in that conversation. And hopefully, listeners, you got on board by rooting for Brock and giving financially. So this is a really important project, and you're back today for more deep conversation about creativity and art and purpose. And this time, you have brought your producer, Justen Overlander. I'm so excited to get to know you more, Justen. I'm grateful for your yes. Welcome back, Brock. Welcome, Justen. Thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Allison. No, this is one of my favorite interviews that I've done was with you. I think we got into stuff that no one has ever talked to me about before, and I was very happy to climb up on that soapbox. So if we're going back up, then let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Justen, for being here and making time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And one clarification, in film business, rarely do you even use the word "the" in front of producer because there are generally several producers.
Yes, of course.
I'm one of several,
yes,
and want to be respectful of that. So not the person in charge, one of the many that are bringing this project to life.
Awesome. Well, I have just recently started following you online, and that's a lot of fun. So I love starting out asking guests who and what they love as just a way to let our listeners know who you are and what's important to you. Brock, do you mind going first, telling us who and what you love?
Yeah. Let's see. I am married happily for 22 years now. Which should be easy to remember since we were married in 2000, and that makes it very simple. But we have 3 daughters. Our oldest just recently left the house, which leaves us with a little bit of a hole in our hearts, as you can imagine. And she wanted to get so far away from us that she moved to Paris, France.
Whoa.
Where she's going to school. Yeah. No, she loves us, but she just wants to study international marketing, and that's where the good course is. So that's
How
where
exciting.
she is. Yeah, pretty exciting. And then we have another daughter, Cammie, who has some special needs and is a senior in high school right now. She's been incredibly impactful on our lives and who we are. And then our youngest is Violet, and she's 11. And in 6th grade. And I forgot, my oldest daughter's name is Alora, and we named her after the baby from Willow, because I'm that much of a nerd. So, but also because it's a really pretty name. But,
yes, it is.
Yeah. And I love what I love. I mean, obviously, I love my family. I love the blessing of knowledge that we have in knowing what our purpose here on earth is. And that's a short way of saying that I have love for the Lord and for my faith. But I always like to identify exactly what that gives me. And I think having that knowledge and having a purpose, knowing what the purpose is so essential to our relationship with God and with our faith.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. How about you, Justin?
Well, first, I want to know if Elora would have been a boy, was Matt Mortigan on the table as a name?
No, I know I couldn't get that one past my wife, but
she's
maybe
got her
Val.
limits.
Maybe Val.
So that's earning me some old nerd cred, right? Willow
Yeah,
came
right.
out
Yeah.
probably
That's
over
a deep cut.
30 years
Y'all,
ago, and I still
I'm
do
out
not
of
know
Willow
that.
references, okay?
That's it for me too. Yeah, Allison, thanks so much for having
Yeah.
us on. And I mean, it sounds trite. It almost sounds like it's rehearsed, or like I'm supposed to say this on a faith podcast. But I do love my family. That's the biggest thing for me. And I know God is first, but let's be real. I would have a very, very difficult time if anything were to happen to my family. I don't have the faith of Abraham. I'm just going to lay that out on the line. I'm
Yeah.
not going to bring my child up a mountain, even if God tells me to. I'm going to fight him tooth and nail on that. So, does that make me a weak Christian? Perhaps. Perhaps it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a 17-year-old daughter, a 13-year-old son, and a 10-year-old son. And I'm coaching my 13-year-old son's football team this year, which has proven to be quite the undertaking. But I am loving it so much, getting to spend more quality time with him, but also just getting to know some of his peers and trying to be a positive influence to them. I focus less on wins and losses and more on just individual victories and character building, team and sportsmanship, team building, stuff like that. So it's been a wonderful treat. And Brock's got me by a year on the marriage department, but yeah, 21 years. And every single one of those years has been marital bliss, as anybody that has been married that long will tell you, right? No, it's ups and downs, and you
always
find
worth
ways
it.
you find ways to
it.
get through the downs, and just recognize that those ups are going to be pretty spectacular if you can get through the downs.
Yeah. Awesome.
For sure.
Well, I would love to spend the next hour talking to y'all about parenting. I have I have a handful myself, some special needs and football players all thrown in there. So, but that's not what we're here for. So, I feel like we grow up, guys, with this idea that says you can be whatever you want to be. What do you want to be? You can do that. But I feel like at some point there's a certain amount of reality that sets in that where it's like, yes, I could, but eating is good too. Paying bills is good too. And so I think that at some point in our life, it's like our passions and our practicality can start to wrestle a bit. And there's this romantic part of me that so badly wants to believe, and that I still tell my kids that, yes, you can be whatever you want to be. Okay, well, here you two, y'all make movies. Okay. And that is no small thing. And I really doubt that either one of you take it for granted. So what's your take? What's your advice? I would love to know how y'all got to where y'all are professionally, and how you got to daydream about making movies and then actually doing it.
Boy, I tell you, I'll let Brock take the lead on this one, and because it's a convoluted answer. There's no right or wrong. This is the greatest industry, I think, out there. And so everybody's path is going to be different. And yeah, I love hearing Brock's perspective on this.
Everybody's path is 100% different. So what I'm going to say is going to apply to absolutely no one, but I'll tell it anyway. So I'm actually going to start this differently. One of my favorite movies, Pixar movies, and one of the movies that I think is the most underrated, is Monsters University. And that movie, the message of that movie basically is this: follow your dreams unless they're super inappropriate for who you are. Which is not a message that you ever get in a kid's film. Usually it's, go for your dreams. You can be whoever you want to be, like you were just saying. That movie says, no, you can't. You might not be built for what you are dreaming of, and you
Oh,
may
so
need to
good.
pivot to
Yeah.
something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such a valuable lesson. And the truth of the matter is that I am a filmmaker right now because my first dream didn't work out. Because what I wanted to be was not who I could be, was not what I was capable of doing. Well, I dreamed as a kid. Well, after I stopped dreaming of being a banker and a lawyer, which was an early childhood thing that I don't know where that came from, but once I got that out of my system, for a couple of decades, my dream was to be a comic book illustrator.
Right. Uh-huh.
Like that's what I wanted to be, and that's everything. I put all my energy into that. I was a kid at the back of the classroom, was always drawing, 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 drawing. And long story short, I got to a point in my late 20s where I realized, hey, guess what? It is never going to happen for me. I am talented enough to make people go, wow, but I am not talented enough, and nor do I want to sacrifice enough to have that career. That is inappropriate for me. And so I had to pivot. And I realized that what I really loved about comic books was the storytelling. And so I pivoted to writing, and that eventually led me into filmmaking. And in looking back now, I see it all as part of the same thing. I've just always been a storyteller one way or another. I just for a very long time thought that was in a purely visual medium. And I've realized now that no, my big strength is in telling stories verbally through direction and writing and script writing, and so when people sometimes they'll say to me like, oh, you're living your dream, like, and it's like, no, I'm not at all. My dream, I tossed that aside a long time ago. This is something better than that. This is better than my dream. And I think there's a huge lesson in there, because I think that's the refiner's fire that I've kind of been through on a personal level, but I think that's not unlike the refiner's fire that God has for us. He will often say to us, hey, this thing that you think you are and that you want to be, I have something way better planned for you. But I'm going to have to put you through hell a little bit in order to get you there, because you really don't get that yet. And that is very much part of my journey as well. The transition from leaving behind my dream and getting into this one. I mean, I did it kicking and screaming. I really did. And it was difficult, and it was filled with years of just, what in the world is going on and what is happening? And I don't understand. And God, have you abandoned me? And looking back now, I can see, no, he never abandoned me. He put me into what I'm doing now the only way it was ever going to happen. And that was with me kicking and screaming. So here I am. And I'm happy to be here. I'm not reluctant at all.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, God's best. I feel like we're always kind of trying to tell God about what he made. He's like, can I tell you about what I made? It's like we flip through this catalog of gifts and point out these things that we want that, have very little to do with us. He's like, could you just be quiet? Anyways, I mean, I understand what you're saying about, our paths being completely different, but I do think that there is so much to gain from watching each other live our lives. So even though that's very unique to you, I think, that's applicable to everyone. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I think we've gotten to a place, and we've been here for a while now, where we put so much emphasis on, well, what do you do? That's one of the first icebreaker questions that you ask when you meet somebody new. Oh, what do you do? And then that leads to, in Minnesota here, it leads to the weather or the Vikings or the Twins. Those are the next three subjects after, well, what do you do?
Right.
And I don't know that God is overly concerned about our vocation or our job, where we clock in, where we clock out. He's just concerned with how we present ourselves and how we portray his message when we're doing whatever we're doing.
Yes.
Some of us are blessed with certain creative abilities that maybe some other people don't have, that particular spiritual gift. Brock is one that definitely has the storytelling gift, and I'm so honored to know him and to be able to partner up with him on the shift. And I believe that I've got some storytelling capabilities as well. And when I realized I wasn't going to be a professional football player, which actually was my dream. I mean, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, even in high school. I mean, I was a pretty decent ball player, got a little bit of attention from some small schools, but I just didn't grow. I mean, 6 foot nothing, 180. I mean, that doesn't get you NFL pedigree. So I always loved acting, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go the acting route, and ended up majoring in theater in college for a hot minute until my dad said, well, what's your fallback going to be? I said, thanks, Dad,
Yeah.
and ended up just getting a teaching degree. And I don't mean that flippantly, just getting a teaching degree, but I went into education and decided that I was going to coach, football and basketball, and pursue the athletic avenue in that way. But I was always moonlighting as an actor still, doing commercials here in the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
It's a small market, and some independent movies would come through, and I do industrials like Best Buy training videos. I would be the Best Buy employee, so Best Buy employees would learn what not to do by watching my goofy face doing the wrong things. But in a small market, you have to teach yourself to do more than just act. You can't sustain yourself. And we've got a great theater market here. I mean, the Guthrie Theater is world renowned. We've got the Chanhassen Dinner Theater, where Amy Adams came through, and a number of other, well-known, famous movie actors. Movie actors. That was a weird phrase. I was going to say movie stars, but I really don't like that term at all. So, people that you would recognize if you saw them walking down
Yeah.
the street is what I was getting at. But theater was never my calling. I need the safety blanket of, okay, let's do that one more time because I want to try it a little different way.
Right.
But anyway, teaching myself how to write, how to direct, taught myself how to produce. There's tons of resources out there, even now, more today than there were 20 years ago when I was really giving myself the self-education. And trial by fire. I mean, there's no, if you want to be in the film industry, there is nothing stopping you from making content right now. Almost everybody has a smartphone. If they don't have a smartphone, you can get $100 HD camcorder off of Amazon. You can start making content. There's free editing software. You can upload it to YouTube. Doesn't matter if you only get 10 views, you're still creating something and you're figuring out what's your voice. What is the process? So if there are young filmmakers listening to this, that's my biggest advice. I know this maybe isn't an advice platform, but just go and do it. Nobody can stop you from creating. So create something and find your voice. And that's kind of what I did early on. And most of my voice early on was terrible. And it was only through meeting Dallas Jenkins that I even got a chance to do anything. Dallas created a show called The Chosen, which is the first ever show about Jesus and his disciples. And it's making good waves within faith circles and allows me the opportunity to have conversations with people that 6-7 years ago I wouldn't have been able to have. So that's a long-winded answer for you, Allison.
Thank you.
Comes from the heart.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with you that I don't think God cares very much about the details, but I do think that how he has gifted us is how we're going to love the best. It's just what makes loving the people around us most sustainable, because we're doing this thing that he's gifted us to do.
And on that note, Allison, really briefly, when Jesus called the disciples, it's not like he told Simon and Andrew, hey, okay, you guys can't be fishermen anymore. That's not the right vocation for being a disciple of me. Now you got to go and do this. You got to be pastors. They were still fishermen when they were disciples. That's the thing. God doesn't necessarily need to change what you're doing for the greater good of the world, vocationally. I mean, your husband's a physician, right? I mean, that is a very important role within the world. And so he doesn't need to leave that to be in full-time ministry. He can do, I don't know, I'm rambling now, but
it's really good. It's like, just go be a really good one,
Exactly.
Okay, so Justin, this next question is for you first. So what happened is I was strolling Instagram, and there was this actor who was giving a really hilarious monologue about what a shame it is that Christian art can be lame, right? And I had never heard anyone put it so plainly before, because we're all trying to be so nice, And it's like, and technically, I mean, we're on the same team, and so it's like I just have to go along with what can sometimes be an embarrassing performance. And so I found it so refreshing that someone was just calling it out. And so, and you know what? I loved that it was funny and not some harsh rebuke. It felt light. And so as the video was promoting what it was promoting, which was the shift, y'all's movie, I felt this great deal of hope that there was something else kind of lining up on the menu. I was like, this is exciting. And so I started sending a bunch of emails. Brock trusted that the person on the other end of these emails was not woohoo, and he answered them and he came on the show. And so we got into this conversation about why we have the greatest story ever told. Why can't we tell it greatly? And so Brock was basically saying, I hope that I summed this up. Okay, Brock, please feel free to correct me. But Brock was basically saying, there's this great lack of ambiguity. There's not a whole lot of nuance when the truth is our lives are full of shades of gray. And you were saying that it's like a scene or a movie, it might feel a lot of urgency to go ahead and tidy things up really nice. They won't let a character yell at his wife. They won't let a character, do something bad without trying to clean it up too quickly. And then I was agreeing rather, that because of that, there's no real experience to be had. As a viewer, I feel so manipulated by these really heavy-handed messages that they insist that I only receive one way. And you were kind of joking, Brock, but you were talking about how, we can't leave anything complicated for too long. And then I was joking that it's like, yeah, we need this little ticker tape on the bottom, right? That says, hey, we're going to clean this up in just a second, just so you know. And so I feel like those things go together, right? It's like there's a spirit of fear. There's fear. There's a lack of trust. There's something very important being cut out of the whole process. And Justen, I would just love your take on that segment of our conversation.
You nailed the word that I was going to lead with. It's that 4-letter F word, fear.
Yeah.
And I think in just our missional work, we are called to be fishers of men. We are called to bring people to the faith. We are called to share the good news, but we are called to share it in love. And when we rearrange love and fear, and we go out there and we say, here's the good news of Jesus, you got to repent or else. You've got to do that. You can't promote that. You can't do this. You can't do that. We're losing the focus of it being good news. I mean, this is the greatest news the world could ever have, is eternal life, to live in perfection with our Lord and Savior. That is good news. So why are we leading with fear and just, oh, well, that political party, they're going to do this to us. Oh, now all our freedom of religion is going to be taken away. All that is going to happen. And it drives me crazy. And that trickles into the faith film world where, if you put that slight nuance out there, somebody might run with that and get the wrong impression, don't you think? Or, some people put here, okay, soapbox. Brock, warned you maybe that I take soapboxes too, or he admitted to taking a few. People put their flag in one particular space in the Bible. Yeah. This is my life verse, and I'm going to put my flag here. I'm going to ignore all that other stuff. I'm going to ignore compassionate Jesus, and I'm going to focus on let's stir up the water, Jesus. Let's make some trouble, Jesus. I've got to teach these people that they're wrong. No, you've got to love those people. And guess what? If they are wrong, they will discover it on their own once they are entrenched in the word. I fully believe that. And so with faith film, there's this fear that you're going to send the wrong message, and portraying something on screen. Here's a fine distinction too. Portraying a sinful act on screen doesn't mean you're promoting it. Portraying it is simply acknowledging this is real life. This is the world. And people relate to that. People relate to junk, to garbage, to bad things. Right. We have to have the courage to show some of the bad stuff.
I feel like the thing with fear is that I feel like we're always having to say, you touched on this a little bit. It's like we're always having to say we are this and we are not that. And it's like we're always separating things into good and bad, the sheep and the goats and the wheat and the chaff and all that jazz. And the problem with that is that we can make it too explicit. It's like we won't just let people decide God lets people decide, you know? Brock, do you have anything? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say free will exists. Who are we to try to take it away? That's one of the most crazy things that Christians try to do. Anyway.
Yeah. No, we need to spend more time trusting people to get it. And that if they don't get it at first, then maybe they will later. And if they don't get it at all, then that thing isn't for them. And that's got to be okay to a certain extent. When you're trying to please everybody and create all of these safety nets, you end up with something that nobody cares about. And I feel like that's where a lot of faith content has landed, where they're landed in this spot where, you know, it's like, we're not offending anyone. Yeah, but you're not attracting anyone either. You know, which isn't to say that we should make things to offend people. That's not the point. I don't believe in this idea of, you know, making trouble in order to get views or whatever the logic there is. I'm only saying that there is an integrity that can happen with our storytelling and with our art that can be attractive to people, and that to a certain degree, yes, you have to risk that not everybody is going to understand it. But the thing is that if you're making sure that, you know, your 75-year-old grandma who, you know, will only read the Bible and no magazines and no other book, if you're trying to make sure that she's going to be happy, well, then you have to accept that there's a whole lot of other people that you're never going to get to watch this thing, that will never be exposed to it. And maybe what you have to say is really, really important. And maybe your grandma with her Bible out, maybe she's covered. Maybe she's got it, you know, and maybe she doesn't really need this story that you're telling or this movie, but maybe there's a whole lot of other people who, if you would just be honest with it and just not be fearful in the way you create it, maybe there's all these other people who really do need it, and maybe they'll come and maybe they'll watch it. And I think that's the perspective shift that needs to happen with a lot of people. And look, ultimately, as a storyteller, I'm not thinking about any of that. I'm just trying to make myself happy. You know, if I can make myself happy, that's really the most important thing, because if I don't make myself happy, then I'm just going to relive all my mistakes for the next, 60 years. And I don't want to do that. So, you know, I'm trying to make sure that this is something that I enjoy, with the idea that if I enjoy it and I appreciate it and I like it, then others will too. And, you know, I don't know. I'm very comfortable with ambiguity. Faith to me has ambiguity embedded into it. I mean, the faith is about not knowing, isn't it? It's about not having proof. It's about all the things we don't know and saying, I believe anyway. Well, what is that if not ambiguity? There is so much that God has not revealed to us that he could. He's all powerful. He's all knowing. He could appear. He has appeared. He would tell us if he wanted us to know all things. He doesn't. Why doesn't he? Because he wants us to dwell in the mystery. And there's too many works of art, movies, whatever, otherwise, that come from a faith perspective that try to get rid of the mystery. Well, in getting rid of the mystery, in my opinion, you're also getting rid of God. You're making it so that something is less honest and less truthful. And what in the world do we have if we don't have the truth?
Yeah, it's really good. You know, there's this, so I'm a yoga instructor, and yoga lends itself to a lot of silence. And I have ideas about how I want people to feel in my class and what I would like them to experience. And so the great temptation is to fill up that silence so that I can ensure that they, get a certain message or feel a certain way. And there's a certain degree of trust in the silence of letting a Holy Spirit move, trusting a Holy Spirit. And if comfort is our love language, I would say that the roses of that love language is certainty, and so we can control something if we can feel certain. And I think the byproduct of that certainty is a certain smugness, or I just feel like it makes us mean. And there's something about, this open-handedness that invites mystery that makes us curious and humble. And just a million times over, I would choose that every day. Even though it is scary or, unknown.
Totally. Well, and it allows you to have your own experience with it. When something is mysterious, I dig into it. Right. I try to uncover what is here, what is there for me to investigate. Yeah, there's a lure there. And that means that as a 20-year-old, I'm going to have one experience with it. And as a 40-year-old, I'm going to have a different experience with it, because I'm going to hit things at different points, and there's enough to dig in there that I can discover it.
Yeah.
When you tell people exactly what it is that you mean, that's it. That's the end of it. There's nothing else for them to dig. They're not going to be able to revisit that later and come at it in a different way and
Yeah.
find new
That's
truths
good.
and new
Yeah.
meanings from it.
There's no
And
layers.
the fact is the scriptures are built this way. The scriptures are built this way. I don't know about you, but every single time I read, I get something different out of it.
Yep.
Why is that? Because there's so much there to uncover and to dig. It's not when Christ told his parables, only rarely did he ever say, hey, this is what I meant. And so those parables are something that we still teach and still discuss to this day, that we still find new truths and new meanings, because it wasn't just all spelled out.
Yeah.
And if he had spelled it all out, he would have robbed us of those additional meanings. He would have robbed us of those additional applications, because we would say, well, it can only mean this because this is what he said. So that's all that means. Well, no, he intended for us throughout the scriptures to read things and talk about Abraham and the sacrifice of Isaac as a similitude of the sacrifice of Christ. But also, we can also look at the story of Abraham as, what do we sacrifice? We can apply that to our own lives, and so there are multiple applications, and a lot of those applications are not just spelled out in the Old Testament. It's very obvious to me as a believer what the story of Abraham is all about on multiple levels. But the story of Abraham is just presented as the story of Abraham.
Right. And would it be far more comfortable if Jesus were gently explaining himself over lunch? Of course it would.
Sure.
But he's not after our comfort.
No, he's not. He's not. And he wants us to change, and he wants us to grow. And if our understanding of the word cannot change and grow, then we won't be able to change and grow. And the understanding cannot change and grow if it is prohibited by a spoon-fed, here's what it means.
Awesome. Anything to add to that, Justin, before we move on to exactly what the shift is and seeks to do?
Well, no, just one thought that came to mind was the same. I don't want to use pastors as an umbrella term, but the same Christians, the same evangelists that are out there saying, hey, you just have to let go and trust God to work inside of you, are the same ones that are saying, no, you've got to change the person in front of you. And that's a big irony to me, is that we're told to let go and allow it to happen inside, but we get so adamant about changing the other people. And I think that we need to flip-flop that a little bit, or at least just even them out a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
and to be clear, I don't disparage some of the faith content out there that may be a little, spoon feeding of the audience. There's a place for that. I'm actually a fan of some of those movies. Look, I own every season of Saved by the Bell on DVD. So good, deep quality entertainment isn't always the forefront of what I'm desiring to consume. Sometimes I just want to feel good and to have something that's a little easy to digest. But I think there's room for more. That's what I'm getting. That's what I think that Brock is wanting to do with the shift and what we're trying to do here. And even with The Chosen, there's room for all kinds of entertainment to reach all kinds of audiences.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so y'all can decide who goes first. But what, in addition to what we're getting, what should Christian movies be saying about God? Maybe we've covered that already, but what is the shift saying? What do you want the shift to do? Tell me about the shift.
Well, I don't want to tell you too much, because I do want people to have their own experience with it, obviously. but no, the shift is very much based on the book of Job, which, as I understand it, is not a well-covered section of the Bible when it comes to faith media. And so if you look at the book of Job and you look at the questions that it asks about God, it asks questions about, what is the purpose of suffering? Why does God allow suffering to occur? Particularly, why does he allow it to occur for people who are, following him and being obedient? Why would a righteous man undergo suffering? And so the shift is very much about that. It's about, why do we go through the things that we go through? What benefit do they have? And then, of course, the other part of the shift, because the shift, for those who don't know, is very much about a man's encounter with who we're calling in the feature film, we're calling him the benefactor. But it's very clear he is essentially the devil. He's Satan, and he's there to tempt our main character. His name is Kevin. He's there to tempt him with riches and fame and whatever he would want. And it's about how Kevin deals with that temptation and the struggle that comes from essentially what happens when you refuse the devil, and the revenge that he will take on you if you
Yeah.
do so. And within that struggle, like Job, Kevin finds himself seemingly alone, and wondering, where is God in his trial? And and so it's about both things. It's about the tug of war that exists between us and, well, actually, where we're in the middle, and over here is God, and over here is the adversary. And what do we do? How do we make sense of the experience of this life when we've got these two forces that are diametrically opposed to each other, both of them pulling on us? And how do we know which way to go? What do we base that decision on? And ultimately, why in the world should we choose God, when over here we've got a guy who's offering a heck of a lot more comfort and attention sometimes?
Yeah.
And I think that's worth talking about. It's worth asking those questions. And I think the shift has some answers, and then there's some things that the shift is a little bit silent on, and allows people to have their own experience with, true to what I've been talking about previously on this interview. And I think that's important. I think it's important to both provide some sort of a thesis or a theme, but then within that, there are some corners. There are some things to think about, and some things to wonder about, and some things to discuss afterwards. I don't know about you, but those are my favorite movies. I got out of
Yeah.
Inception, and I was like talking about it for weeks.
Yeah, right.
And even today, did the top fall over at the end? You can go for hours with some people on that topic. And that's what gets me the most excited about the movies, and about the stories that I love. And so there's that element of the shift there as well. There really is a lot. I hope that there's a lot there to dig into for people.
Yeah. Justin, what's the shift saying about God?
Yeah, and I'm just excited that it's not spoon feeding scripture, or here's the way you're supposed to believe, here's the way you're supposed to act. It's showing a very human person reacting to a fairly supernatural circumstance. And then we can put ourselves in his shoes because we're similar to him. He's an everyman. Would we react that same way? And those are the discussions that I hope people are having afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
You can have whatever you want in this world. Just say the word and I'll do it for you. Do you do that? It's tempting. This world feels like we're here for a long time, even though it's pretty short, all things considered. Or do you resist that temptation in favor of what's about to come? The eternal life with Jesus. So, yeah, I love the questions that it's posing, and hopefully people will have discussions about that after seeing it.
Yeah. Great. This is important to me because I am, naturally optimistic, and I don't think that glib arguments or complaints without solutions are very nice. So can we talk for a little bit about Christian art that we love? Can we talk for a little bit about who your inspirations are and what has influenced you that felt important?
Absolutely. I guess I'll go first. Obviously The Chosen. I mean, I think in terms of the Christian art that's being put out right now, I think The Chosen is right there at the very top. It's really showing a new way to do things. The shift, the inception of the shift actually predates The Chosen. The short film that we have that's available at angel.com/The Shift was made before The Chosen came out. But once The Chosen came out, there was this light bulb that went on in my head, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe there's a space for this weird thing that I've created that only I and my friends have ever seen, or I thought ever would see. And so that's why we ended up putting it out into the world, and why it is where it is now. But there's other great things going on in Christian media as well. And I think I automatically think of movies. Just a couple nights ago, I watched Father Stew, which I thought was excellent. A little too much with the language for me. I'll admit I used the magic of VidAngel to take out all the F words, but at its core, it's such a fantastic story of faith and triumph. I didn't know Father Stew's story at all. I didn't know anything, and so it was quite an experience to go on that journey with him. I also recently saw American Underdog, which actually, I'm going to out myself here. I'm not a sports fan, so I didn't know anything about Kurt Warner either, which is probably blasphemous to most people in the United States, but I really didn't. And so so it was fascinating to see his story. That's by the Irwin brothers, and starring Zachary Levi. And that movie takes a very light approach to faith. It's very lightly touched on, and there's a couple of moments of prayer, but there's zero preaching in that movie. And for the most part, it's just very much holding faith at an arm's length almost, which I think is actually kind of great. I think American Underdog is one of those movies that is going to get in front of more people, and they're going to see faith almost taken for granted. It's just part of these characters' lives, not even characters, these were real people, obviously. And it's just part of the fabric of their lives, not treating it as something odd or weird or to be laughed at, but also not treating it as something like extra special that everybody needs to strive for.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in a representation that's that subtle. And that's that just, not on the nose. And so, those would be three things that I would point to that have been very successful just recently.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, first of all, I have a confession to make that I don't like that we separate faith films from mainstream films. I don't like that we have to categorize them as such. Just put them in their respective genres. If they happen to have faith elements in them, whether it's overt or, kind of nuanced, so be it. And one of my all-time favorite movies is actually It's a Wonderful Life, which has some wonderful Christian values in it, and great family values, and just kind of a coming of age story, as it were. And I'll even reference Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park from 1993, 92, something like that. One of the lines
I can't wait to hear this.
Well, there's a brilliant line. Dr. Ian Malcolm, played by the great Jeff Goldblum, says, scientists were so enamored with the fact that they didn't stop to think of whether they should. And I think that is such a brilliant line, and such just something that more people need to reflect on nowadays too.
Yeah.
And
cool.
there's not much faith. Certainly not a Judeo-Christian faith. I mean, that was made by people that are primarily of the Jewish faith. So, Christ is not any part of Jurassic Park. But for me, that spoke to me spiritually. That line right there, and that evoked an emotion for me. And look, there's a song by Billy Joel, and Billy Joel certainly doesn't strike you as someone overly faith in that realm, especially with a song called Only the Good Die Young. But his song, Don't Ask Me Why, came into my head one night when I was praying so diligently for God to take away the desire to be in this film industry. This was, 10, 12, 14 years ago, whatever it was. And I was struggling big time, and had left teaching not too long ago, and we were struggling financially. And I was looking for work and outside of the film world, and kept just praying, why do I still have this desire? And I'm not kidding you, the song Don't Ask Me Why came into my head.
Wow.
And I think I even put something about that out on social media, which was still kind of fledgling at the time. And of course, the pushback is,
of course.
that's a secular song. There's nothing Christian about that. God's not speaking to you through a Billy Joel song. I don't know. I don't have the great gift of discernment. So if God wants to speak to me through something secular, and look, I'm listening, still working my way through The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And God worked through individuals that may have had impure motivation there.
That's right.
God finds a way to work through junk. Brock and I both have massive tragedies in our history. Brock talked about this a lot on the first podcast. I lost my youngest sister to a drunk driver when she was 18. And she was my very favorite person growing up. Like, I thought the world of her. And in many ways, I was more a parent to her than my actual parents were at times. There's more to that story that I won't get into. But losing her ripped my world apart, completely ripped it apart. God didn't cause that, but through it, God has allowed me to strengthen myself, to become a better storyteller, to become more empathetic towards other people. So do I think God causes tragedies like that? No, but do I think he works through them?
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely do.
Yes. What's her
So
name?
I think he can also speak through a Billy Joel song.
Yeah,
I'll
why
just
not?
leave it at that.
Yeah. If you can
Blasphemer.
speak through great suffering, why not top 40 hit. What was her name?
Mackenzie, and I named my first production company after her,
Oh,
Mackenzie Productions. Yeah.
wonderful.
That's so
Wonderful.
cool.
I'm deeply sorry to hear that. I was thinking about this, trying to find my own common denominators about the things that I love, and similarly the things that make me not love something, like the same things that make me really love it, or the same things that make me really not love something. And the first is a good use of words. I just care about words. I love language. The second one is an authentic Jesus. Like if we're talking, faith-based stuff, it's an authentic Jesus that represents. The rebellious kind friend, that I've come to worship. And then, I cannot think of the third thing, which is unfortunate. An inclusivity. So it's an inclusivity. It's like it's something that crosses lines and breaks barriers. And so, if I don't like something, Christian in the Christian realm, it's always because it's using really sweet saccharine language. It's always because they've guessed about what would make Jesus most appealing to the world, and they've guessed wrong or whatever. And then it's something that says, hey, you can be a part of this club. It's that lack of inclusivity. You can be a part of this club that's led by this God in a box if you jump through, all of these hoops. And so I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that the same things that we love, their antithesis can always be the things that rub us really, really wrong, which I inevitably find in Christian made stuff all the time. Okay. So I have a question for y'all about your processes, about creativity. I think there's a lot there. Brock, you touched on that when you are creating something, it is always and only for you. And I think that is so wise, and probably maybe took you some time to get to, because I think that it's really natural to create for the people that we want to be moved, right? It's like it can be really outcome based. Like I want people to like this, so I'm thinking of them as I'm creating it. And yet there's this paradoxical thing that says in order to reach other people, you have to shut them out. And so how must Christian-made things fall into that trap when we so badly, inevitably and maybe rightfully, like per the Great Commission, want to reach other people with this good news that we have. And so we can make this outcome-based thing, kind of take all the wrong orders. What are your thoughts on reaching people in your creative process?
Well, it's not really just a Christian thing, is it? I mean, even
Right.
Hollywood makes this mistake when they're trying to create something that is going to have the broadest possible audience, or to satisfy, A Hangover was successful, so let's get a bunch of guys on a drunken bender in New York, and let's do a movie. I don't even know if that's a real movie, but there's this idea of like, okay, well, let's make something that appeals to these people or to that people, and there's all kinds of different motivators for that. It's a struggle. It really is, because at the same time, I can say, yeah, I make it for myself all I want. But the fact of the matter is that if I wasn't also making it for other people, I probably would never make it. It would just live in my head all the time.
Yeah.
The act of creation is to try to make something that you can get across to other people. I want other people to see the work. I want them to have an experience with it. And I specifically want them to have the experience I want them to have with it. That doesn't always happen. And that's part of the risk of ambiguity, is that people are going to have a different experience than what you intend. But while I am making something that is for me and that I have to be personally satisfied with, because if I don't, then I really do beat myself up a lot. I also do want to get it across. And so It's both things. I mean, it starts with me. It starts with, what do I want to do? What am I passionate about? And then it becomes, okay, now how do I create that in a way that other people will want to take it in? And then that's not so much making concessions or compromises. It's just realizing that communication is a two-way street. It's not just about like the really bad teachers I had in college. They would just spit out the information. Here's all the info. I taught it to you. Good teachers think about the experience that their students are having and how to have it come across. I had one really good math teacher who really thought about things from a beginner's perspective, who would think about how do you teach algebra in a way that somebody who is confused as soon as you put letters into a math equation, how do you teach math to somebody who's confused when that happens?
Yeah.
Most math teachers, for them, they're so far removed from, and this is true for anything, I'm just using math teachers as one example, they're so far removed from the experience of learning the math when they first began, that the only way they know how to communicate it is in terms of that they understand currently and now. And to them, it's all very simple and very easy. I'm picking on math teachers because this is where I've encountered this problem the most.
Yeah, right.
And so they spit it at you like, here you go. This is everything. This is all you need to know. And I'm sitting there like, I don't understand that at all. Like, you have not explained this in a way that my little pea brain, who gets really frustrated when you put A's and X's into things, I can't understand what you're talking about. Like, I don't understand how algebra works at all. To this day, I don't. But I did for a little while because I had this really great math teacher who understood how my little pea brain approaches things and how I don't have his base of knowledge. And so he took everything back to one and he explained it from there. And that's the same thing as when you're creating a story. There's a story that exists in my head and it's very clear to me. How do I get that story across to somebody else who doesn't know all the lore and the backstories and what color shirt my characters wear on Sundays and all these things that I've created in my head that make all this story make sense? How do I create something that they don't need to see inside my head in order to understand it?
Yeah.
And that's where not concession, not compromise, that's where the communication happens. Storytelling is simply the communication of something that's already mostly fully formed in here.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of storytellers make that mistake where, I've even attended screenings where afterwards the filmmaker got up and explained like everything that was going on in the movie that wasn't in the movie, as though we all should have gotten it. And there was no way to get it. It's like, dude, that really only exists in your head. You did not create that movie. And so, I think that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I believe Jesus meets us where we're at. I believe that he communicates specifically to the individuals. And so when I'm crafting a story or when I'm coming up with, something to share, I try to imagine if I was on the receiving end of that, how am I going to receive that? And so my process is, and then from the marketing side of things too, I mean, with The Chosen, primarily my focus was how can we expand our outreach? What is something that we can take from behind the scenes and get it out into new audiences, and how will they receive this? So I mean, it really is for me. I know the way I would react in a situation. I know the way I want a character to react in a situation. But if that isn't going to be received in a beneficial way, in an impactful way, then I actually will modify my approach just a little bit from the storytelling side. Now that's not to say that I'm compromising big time, because of outside forces or what have you, but I think having the audience in mind to some degree is important, because otherwise you can run into that screening example that Brock said is, this is my vision. I'm going to do it. And if anybody doesn't get it, I'm just going to explain it to them.
Right.
And you've got to be open to feedback too. You have to put your stuff out there for others to offer feedback. And if you're hearing some fairly consistent notes, you have to take those into account. Stubbornness is not going to get you far in this industry. So
yeah, it's good. There is a tension. There's a tension between becoming all things to all men and then kind of over strategizing, because when people can sniff out strategy. And so when you're loving with like this really heavy-handed agenda, it can be really off-putting. I have this, it was the last episode that we did. It was my friend Dan, who is really passionate about helping people who are experiencing homelessness. And he was talking about, in our desire to help, we can skip welcome, and so a lot of our helping is kind of putting helping aside for a moment. And so he was likening it to going to Thanksgiving with his brother and sister. He said, I love my brother and sister. And when I'm going to Thanksgiving with my brother and sister, I'm not strategizing in my head the whole way there. How can I help my brother and my sister? I just delight in my brother and my sister. Now, that probably ends up helping them. And I just thought that was so crucial that we so often skip this step of welcome or of delight. And Jesus, he can show his intimacy, with someone by saying their name. So there's kind of an expedited process there, but I think it's our great temptation to skip it and just get to the good stuff. And then people are, feel manipulated like me all the time. And I'm rebellious. Okay. So let's talk about just really quick, because we're about out of time, but I do want to hear what's new and exciting with the shift, because there have been so many developments, Brock, since we talked last. Let's talk about all the exciting things going on. And then I'd love to hear what you guys are hopeful for, and we'll call it an interview. What's up with the shift?
Oh gosh, there is so much happening with the shift. So earlier this year, we brought on Ken Carpenter as a producer, and then it was shortly after that Justin also came on as a co-producer. And so we've really built up our behind the scenes team. We've also brought on Beverly Holloway, who's the casting director for The Chosen. She's our casting director as well. And the big news in the last month is that we've cast a number of roles. We are headed right into a January 2023 production start date. And so casting is happening now. We've brought on Liz Tabish, who plays Mary Magdalene in The Chosen. She's going to be playing our female lead, Molly. We've also brought on Jorge Garcia from Lost to be playing a character called Ramirez. I'm going to remember them all. We brought on Rose Reed from Finding You. She's going to play Tina, the waitress from our short film. And we brought on Paras Patel, who plays Matthew in The Chosen. He'll be playing Rajit. We brought on Jordan Alexandra as Priya. She is the wife of Rajit. And we brought on Jordan Walker Ross as Brendan, who's kind of the jerk boss, which is really funny because Brendan's or Jordan Walker Ross is one of the nicest people on the planet. He'll be playing a total jerk in our movie. But and that's we're just getting started. We have more actors that we're talking to right now, and many more roles to cast as we go forward. And then of course all of this is happening during our fourth. And I do believe, most sincerely, I can't see it happening again, our final crowdfunding raise. This is the last opportunity,
guys. Listen up.
I believe, for people to come in and partner with us and invest in the shift. And you can find out all those details and see what's going on with that and how to do that at angel.com/the shift. But it's a limited time thing. And once it's over, it's over. And,
correct me if I'm wrong or if I overspeak, but this is how The Chosen was born too, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We are where The Chosen was at once upon a time. And just like The Chosen, in just a few months' time, we'll have a lot of people asking us, begging us to open up investment again. And we will say, I'm sorry, the opportunity has passed. And so, yeah, it is very much like how The Chosen started, which of course Justin is very familiar with because he was there from the very beginning. So he's a great asset to have with us on the shift. But we believe in the shift's potential to reach a very big audience and a different audience even than what The Chosen has reached. This is a theatrical film. This is going to go wide into many theaters across the country and across the world. That's what's happening with the shift. It's the first feature film from Angel Studios, which means they're putting all their muscle behind it, and it's their muscle that really helped make The Chosen into what it is today. So this is a film that has every advantage, which to me, as someone who is newer to the film industry, feels very much like a miracle. There's absolutely no reason that this film should be made at all. It's just, I'm nobody, but I've surrounded myself with a lot of somebodies who believe in me and believe in this project for reasons that I will be eternally grateful for. So I'm very blessed to be in this position, but I think it's because this is an important story we're telling. This is a very different kind of story. This is also it's got some faith elements, but it's also a sci-fi story, which is really weird and really scary to a lot of people, but is also really, really exciting. And it portends a big new audience that we haven't really reached before. And that is what is exciting. to everybody who is aligned with us and who is partnering with us through investment.
Yeah. Anything additionally, Justin, that you're excited about?
Well, no, just to elaborate just a little bit on the sci-fi element too. One of the criticisms we have received is you can't fictionalize God, and we're not. That we have to make that perfectly clear. Nothing about Scripture is being fictionalized here. Brock has simply created a tremendously gorgeous and deep universe, multiverse. Can I say multiverse, Brock? Is that
Yes, you
giving away
can.
too much?
No, not at all.
In which we don't fictionalize God, but we have some faith elements that are true to Scripture. But there's no scriptural, to my knowledge, there's no scriptural references in the feature, is there, Bob?
Nothing direct. No.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
No,
So
nobody
anyway,
cracks open a Bible and starts reading it. Yeah, that doesn't happen.
yeah. So I just wanted listeners to just be rest assured that this we're not personifying God, and we're not putting this fictional faith element in there. This is a fictional world with faith elements in it, and people like C.S. Lewis did that wonderfully.
I was just
And
going to say,
I don't see any
I'm
difference.
annoyed. I'm annoyed already because I would be fine if you were, and I think a parable is fictionizing God. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So I would love to end with what you guys are hopeful for, and then we're gonna for real end with exactly where to find you and where to go to help. And I dropped an earbud, so just a moment. Y'all can talk. What are you hopeful for, Brock?
What am I hopeful for? I'm hopeful for a lot of things. I think the thing that I think about the most right now is that I'm hopeful that this division that we have in our world, maybe particularly in our country right now, that it can heal a bit, that we can start coming together a little bit more. That's something that's on my mind a lot. I try to be more of a bridge builder than a divider. I try to be not very political for that reason. I just think we have wrapped so much of our identities up in things that that divide us. And I firmly believe, and I will always believe, that across the human spectrum, we all have far more things in common than we don't. And yet too often we're pointing at those differences and saying that's who we are. And the fact of the matter is those are the exceptions to the rule, which is that we are all children of God. And I would love to see, I'm hopeful that we can get back to a place like that. And maybe get back to a place like that is wrong. Maybe it's a misperception that we were ever there in the first place. Yeah. So I'll just say instead that I'm hopeful that we can get to that place where we can start seeing the commonalities more than we see the differences in the eyes of the people that we meet or encounter online or anywhere else.
What do you hope for,
Justin? That's precisely, I think, why Brock and I get along so well, and why we hit it off immediately when we first met on the set of The Chosen, ironically. And I'll just add to Brock's sentiments, which I agree with 100%. I want to build bridges and get back to what unites us rather than focusing on what divides us. And let's stop assigning motives. Let's not assume that somebody said something because they wanted X. We don't know that. We don't know what motivated a particular phrase to be spoken, a particular act to be acted upon. So let's start giving people the benefit of the doubt, and let's engage in conversation rather than immediately starting to lecture. Lecturing is not how you change somebody's mind. Conversing. If you want to change somebody's mind, and there are minds out there that do need to be changed. We can't gloss over that fact. But lecturing them and belittling them is not the way to do it. Yeah. Listening actually has a whole lot more benefit than lecturing. And I love to listen to people. I did a Instagram reel not too long ago talking about perspective. And I'm doing home renovation, so I actually had a new door that I had to install. I had it laying down on its side, and I was laying down on its side, but it looked like I was standing up. I said, "Are you sure your perspective is always accurate?" Yeah. And I moved my phone, and there you saw me laying on the floor and the door behind it. And I did have a few people say, "Hey, if you're right, you can't change your perspective. You can't bend your perspective. The truth is more important than perspective." Perspective has nothing to do with truth. Perspective is recognizing why somebody believes their
Yeah.
particular truth and
Sure.
starting to unpack that a little bit, meeting them where they're at, having those
Good.
conversations. And then, it might take 6, 7, 8 years before you're able to actually have a faith-centric conversation with them.
Yeah.
Be willing to take the time, man. Just be willing to take the
Yeah.
time.
That's great. Thank you. Thank y'all both so much. Okay, where do we follow and what do we do?
Yeah, so we're at Justin, help me with the social handles. I can never remember them exactly because they're confusing.
Well, the easiest thing is angel.com/theshift. You can go learn more about us there. You can even invest in the project. Allison, I don't know when this episode drops. We have a finite amount of time.
Yes.
Mid-October, investment round is closing. So we're at the very end here. Angel.com/theshift. And this isn't a pitch. This is simply saying if you want more truth affirming, light bringing content in this world that dares to go to a dark place to show the light. Without night, we don't know what day is. Day does not exist without the contrast of night. So good does not exist without the contrast of evil. So the shift does a wonderful job of showing the lightness, the light and the dark. So in angel.com/theshift is where you go to learn more, possibly become an investor and being, on the team with us as a financial supporter.
And do that quickly.
Do it quickly. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of time remaining on that. And one of the biggest questions I got, or one of the most common questions I got when I was still with The Chosen, and by the way, I'm still dear friends with all of them there. It was just time for me to move on and explore some other projects. I'm still a huge fan. I'm so excited about season 3 because I'm going to be going in knowing nothing. Well, a little thing. I still have insider channels, but I don't know very much. So I'm excited about season 3. Anyway, one of the most common questions I got was, how do I invest in The Chosen? And it just simply didn't exist anymore. This is your last chance.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. It is your last chance to invest in The Shift. Angel.com/theshift. And social media, we're at The Shift Film on Instagram. And on Facebook, we are at Shifty Film. But if you search for The Shift Film on your Google, it'll come up.
The great sage Google, yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome. I couldn't appreciate you both more, really. I feel like Hollywood is out there trying to create masterpieces and Christians are out there trying to, create goodness. And the Shift Film says, let's do both. Those things do not need to be in opposition. Those things do not need to be in opposition of each other. So thank you, Brock. Thank you, Justin, for following your callings and believing in what it is that God has given you to tell, the story to tell. We're so grateful. I know that you've taken many risks and made sacrifices. It's costly and it's worth it. And we're really grateful. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much,
Allison. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate you.
There you have it, friends. I hope that you're excited about this. I really do believe that art and beauty can sometimes cross lines and allure and bring us together in ways that doctrine and dogma can't. I hope that you feel inspired to take a moment, go visit angelstudios.com/theshift. God doesn't want to change the world without us. What a gift it is to co-labor. We are so excited about season 9. It's shaping up to be really, really awesome. Please go ahead and hit subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. See you next season.
Today's show was a production of Allison Sullivan in conjunction with the Forte Catholic Podcast Network. For more great Catholic podcasts, head on over to fortecatholic.com/podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.